Hi there, I'm Steven, the Director of Education here at Beyond Education Consulting, bringing you another answer to one of our frequently asked questions. And for today's question, we're answering, is online or in-person tutoring better for students? Let's go ahead and get an answer just out of the gate. Generally speaking, students are going to benefit from any kind of tutoring, just to be clear, but there's three components that we have to carefully consider when trying to find the best answer for your student. And of course, the three components, number one would be the student, that are of course going to be at the heart of everything that we do, the tutor, because the tutor can certainly make a difference depending upon their background and experience, and then finally, the circumstances that you, the tutor, and really all stakeholders are contending with. So let's focus first on the student. Younger or more easily distracted learners can often benefit from in-person learning. Now, whether in-person learning is happening at home or a library or even a tutoring office, ultimately having a physical presence will help to potentially center the student, make sure that they're engaged, and generally just read some of the body language that younger learners tend to kind of rely on because they're not often their best self-advocates. In other words, when they have questions or concerns, they may not vocalize those things, being a little bit younger or just less inclined to sort of speak up. And having a physical presence where an educated or very well-versed instructor can kind of observe those things can make all the difference. Additionally, the learning environment itself can be very helpful. Students are used to learning in classrooms, and classrooms are set up in a way that is, of course, conducive to learning. So having a library or having an office that they can go to meet their instructor could be really helpful for making sure that things are moving in a good direction. Additionally, home spaces or familiar spaces can sometimes be distracting. Maybe there's siblings running around or pets or just lots of things that want to kind of demand the student's attention. Sometimes those familiar places are simply too comfortable for the student to really be on their best kind of position or in their best position to really pay attention to what's going on. And finally, different learning styles may be something we want to go ahead and consider. Visual or tactile learners often benefit from being in person, meaning that they can sort of interact with things or see things firsthand, manipulate things in a more direct kind of way. So these would be some of the things to consider about this regarding the student when it comes to determining whether in-person or online learning is best. Let's talk a little bit about the tutor. Tutors are always going to have to prepare very intentionally regardless of the scenario they're facing. However, their ability to prepare will be something that kind of varies from topic to topic and based on what kind of communication has been had beforehand with the student and family. Is there going to be a request for student resources, a discussion of goals and/or challenges? These are some of the things that a tutor should be doing in order to make any kind of tutoring successful. But again, they're going to need different resources, typically depending upon whether we're working in person or online. Additionally, we want to know, should any diagnostic measures be taken in order to assess students' abilities? And would those be better done again in person or online? Once again, based on the sort of student's background and, of course, the topic being discussed, things like math or science or language arts and other humanities, they're going to require different diagnostic approaches. And once more, whether things are done online or at home can make all the difference. And lastly, we want to know how much personal experience is a tutor going to have with either format. So if you're considering having your son or daughter work with an instructor, make sure you understand kind of how familiar they are with potentially online tools or tools that would be used in person. As long as we have a sense of whether the tutor can be effective, I would say that we're going to go ahead and be really well supported in either case. But experience really does make all the difference sometimes. And lastly, let's talk about the circumstances. The topics being reviewed may have visual aids or cues. Something like math, for example, has a lot of visual cues that students learn within their classrooms and see within their textbooks. In other words, when they see formulas or certain expressions or word problems, they've likely seen these before and they know something about the problem based on literally what they see on the page in front of them. So sometimes having those visual aids online or in person doesn't really make the difference, but science topics often have visual aids, and those things do make a significant difference because textbooks are different, presentations within classrooms are different, maybe the teacher is using lecture slides, so on and so forth. So we want to make sure we're aware of how the topic itself may influence the answer to our question around in-person versus online tutoring. And additionally, how students prefer to work with those resources will also come to bear. A good example here would be, are students taking notes in their classes, or are they getting physical worksheets from their classes? If they are, those things can be just a little trickier to share with instructors online, although not impossible by any means. Next, projects or special assignments can sometimes have presentational elements that, again, will be better served by in-person work. If a student is supposed to prepare and present some kind of work they're doing in the classroom, that's something that they probably want to have a physical audience for when they're practicing. To be clear, this could also be a parent, not just a tutor, but ultimately some kind of practice or rehearsal might be better served in person. Slides or digital resources, though, can be great online, right? So if that's something that we're looking at, again, not a huge concern. Finally, of course, logistics and just student or family obligations can kind of make or break the whole conversation too. If your student is extremely busy with sports or after-school activities, or maybe your family's just got a lot going on, sometimes online support is going to be the best option because it makes logistics easier and it means the student is getting the kind of attention that they ultimately need. So again, please keep all those things in mind. To kind of wrap up, we want to worry about students who struggle with motivation, concentration, or possibly other needs like learning differences. In those instances, if we know our student struggles with these elements, in-person support may be the route to go. On-screen learning and interaction, though, is becoming much more normalized and certainly has been since COVID for many, many students. And of course, your student probably spends a fair amount of their time in front of a screen if they're anything like most of the ones that we work with. So again, online time is not or online situations are probably something going to be fairly familiar to students. And standardized exams like the SAT and ACT are available digitally as of this year, so students are likely to see many of their most important tests showing up on a computer screen. And finally, again, we always want to take into consideration the student, the tutor, and the circumstances. I'd recommend discussing these with any of your educational stakeholders, whether it's your family at home, an instruction team like the one that we have here at Beyond Education, or even teachers at school. Ultimately, considering all perspectives is probably going to be the best way to find the right answer here for your student regarding tutoring. For all things academic and test prep, please reach out to us at Beyond Education Consulting. We're more than happy to help any way we can. Thanks so much.